fam. I mean, we can go to therapy and talk about everything. We can journal, we can meditate, read all those really fantastic self-help books. I mean, look, hello. Most of my bookshelf is full of them. So I'm not an anti self-help book, but we can do all of that, and we can know all of the stuff, and it can be cycling around in our head. But at some point, we have to look in the mirror, and we have to know that we are responsible for changing our lives. And this is a privilege for people who are able to, and we should embody that and honor that with everything else that's going on in the world right now. I think that people that have privilege... Sorry, I just got a message from someone. People who have privilege the way that I do as an Australian who lives in Australia, we don't have an excuse. There is no excuse to blame external reasons, to have your locus of control externalized, where you like, I am reacting in this way because of this or because of that or because of you. We do not have that right as privileged people to blame others. We just don't. And the sooner that we can fully accept that fact, that our lives are, even if we've experienced devastation, trauma, hurt, uncomprehendable trauma, betrayal, anything. We cannot blame anyone or anything or any external institution for our reaction. I mean, we can, but it's gonna get you nowhere. It's gonna get you nowhere. It's gonna deepen you into resentment, and resentment is a poison that you drink whilst hoping that another person dies. Accountability is brutal, and none of us really truly want to be brutal with ourselves. It's a self-preservation. We have a self-preservation instinct, and this is how I raised my children, right? So I'd take them to the park and I would sit on the bench and read a book, because my children were born with a self-preservation instinct, which means they're not going to do anything insanely stupid. And I know that I have a point with that, because I've studied psychology, and I know that neurodevelopment of children from 0 to when children and being children. So our self-preservation instinct, right, tells us that accountability is scary. It tells us that healing is brutal, because all of those things feel really uncomfortable. And it's not. This is why I mentioned the self-preservation instinct, right? Because people can get really down on themselves for being so totally immersed in their own shit and feeling like they... Sorry, this is not written in a script or edited in any way, so I need to try and work out what I'm trying to say. Growth is uncomfortable. And our self-preservation instinct is to not feel discomfort in any form. But this is also wired into our brain. So We don't want to feel discomfort. If something brings us dopamine or joy, or self-satisfaction, we want to do that more. And I mean, the dopamine is kind of the biggest player here, because it can be ignited by many things that are not so helpful for being fulfilled individual. But sometimes growth is not dopamine inducing, and our brains are wired to continue to do the thing that makes our brains absorb dopamine more readily, but also emit dopamine more readily. We just want more dopamine. So we're wired for that, which means that we don't necessarily want pain if we can avoid it. And that makes sense historically, right? However, taking responsibility for your own part to play in your life's little, I mean, you know, this is all relative to me being in a safe environment where I don't have external threats infiltrating my everyday existence. But even the notion of I am responsible for changing my life makes people uncomfortable. And this is what I'm trying to get at. This should not make people uncomfortable. But we've been conditioned to externalize our locus of control. So the locus of control is, it's the political system, or it's the suppression of women, or it's, and maybe I'm a bit controversial, right? However, these things exist all around the world, but we are able to thrive and flourish even though these external systems still exist. And this is where your internal locus of control comes in. This is where your accountability comes in. This is where you realize that you can have control over how you react to those said circumstances. And I keep saying this because of the current global situation, but also a global situation that's been going on forever. I have control over myself and my own safety. There are people in the world that don't, and I acknowledge that. But coming from where I am, I do have that control. I can very easily blame other people for the way that I react, or what's happened in my life, or like people have done things to me that are not okay. And I'm not going to go into that because I don't need to. Because regardless of that, my locus of control is inside me. It's an internal locus of control. I don't choose the way I behave based on an external body or an external person or an external institution upsetting me or doing something unjust or treating me unfairly. I have an internal locus of control, and I have control over my life. The only way that I got there was knowing that I am the only one that's responsible for my life and my sense of well-being. And you can journal as much as you want, and journaling's really good, therapy is really good, talking about your stuff's really good, but there is a certain point in that where you just keep regurgitating, you keep rotating on your resentments, on your anger, on what was unfair, on how you think things should be different. And often therapists, I'm not going to have an opinion on that, but often therapists will satisfy that for you. They will say, yes, you're in pain. You've had trauma. But that's not helpful, because you already know that. What's helpful is knowing that you are the only person responsible for changing your life.